Renewable energy cannot save our planet. Although they are very lucrative resources of energy, they are not capable of meeting the demand of the masses. And in today's video, we are going to see why renewable energy is not enough for our planet, despite being renewable. But before we move forward in the video, make sure to subscribe for more content and like this video to receive similar suggestions from YouTube. Although we highly appreciate your comments. Now, let's get straight into the video. The technology of harnessing the power of nature to meet human needs is as old as the first sailing ship. However, as the Industrial Revolution, based on concentrated energy trapped in fossil fuels, has advanced, attention has shifted away from renewable sources. This is exacerbated by the increasing use of grid-based fossil fuel electricity and the importance of high-density and portable energy sources for the transportation era. As electricity demand increases and supply relies mostly on fossil fuels and a small amount of hydropower and later nuclear power, concerns arise about carbon dioxide emissions, which contribute to possible global warming. The focus is again on the great sources of energy that surround us in nature, the sun, wind, and especially the oceans. There's never been a doubt about its size. The challenge has always been to use it to meet the demand for reliable and affordable electricity. Today, many countries have made progress in addressing this challenge, testing the practical limits of wind and solar energy. The relatively weak nature of wind and solar energy makes their use very material intensive, many times more than high energy density sources. Wind turbines have developed rapidly in recent decades. Photovoltaic technology is much more efficient, and the prospects for using tidal energy have improved. In particular, solar thermal technology with partial heat storage has great potential in sunny climates. With the government's push to use wind and solar energy, the costs have dropped and are now in the same league per kilowatt hour power generation delivered as fossil fuel cost, especially when a carbon tax is imposed on power generation. However, the variability of wind and solar energy does not meet most of the demand, and as some countries have built in significant capacity in response to government incentives, sometimes massive and sometimes non-existent, production from these sources possess major problems for the economy of the system as a whole. The new focus is on system costs associated with reliable, demand-based supply. The levelized cost of electricity, LCOE, is used to represent the average unit price of electricity generated at the actual plant, which means that all costs can be covered over the life of the plant. This includes capital, financing, operation and maintenance, fuel, if any, and decommissioning. Another relevant indicator is the Energy Return on Investment, EROI. It is not mentioned for specific projects, but is a more general subject of study. EROI is the ratio of the energy supplied by a process to the energy used directly and indirectly, and is part of a life cycle analysis, LCA. An EROI of about 7 is considered economically feasible for developed countries. The average EROI in the United States for all generation technologies is approximately 40. The published study on EROI by Weisbach et al. In 2013 points out these coming points. The nuclear, water, coal, and energy systems in that order are of the same order of magnitude. This raises questions about the sustainability of wind and solar photovoltaics that have not been taken into account in national energy policies. The World Energy Outlook 2016 states that variable renewable energy, VRE, has 5 technical characteristics that distinguish it from more traditional forms of power generation. First, its maximum output varies based on real-time wind and sunlight. Second, these fluctuations can only be predicted a few hours to the day before. Third, they are asynchronous and use devices known as power converters to connect to the grid. Fourth, this may be important, they are more modular and can be used in the future. Fifth, wind and sunlight can be opposites for fossil fuels or nuclear, is not transported. And although renewable energy resources are available in many areas, the best resources are often located far from load centers, which in some cases increases cost. These points are highlighted in the OECD Agency Nuclear Energy publication, featured and modeled in more detail in 2019. The entire model is within the emission limit value of 50 grams CO2 per kWh and quantifies the system costs due to the different amounts of VRE inputs, although there is a reduced cost to the LCOE and zero marginal cost for their largely systemic effect. Systemic effects are often divided into the following 4 roughly defined categories. Number 1, profile costs, also referred to by some researchers as usage fees or reserve costs. Number 2, balance fee. Number 3, network costs. Number 4, network connection fee, sometimes included in the cost of electricity generation. The 2019 NEA study states profile cost or operating cost refer to the increase in generation costs of the entire power system in response to variability in VRE performance. Therefore, they are at the center of the concept of systemic effects. In particular, they take into account the fact that in most cases it is more expensive to produce residual load in a VRE system than in equivalent systems where the VRE is replaced by a delivery system. Energy sources such as open water and gas turbines, demand-side metering, electricity storage, robust and intelligent transmissions, and distribution networks. Network-level system costs for VREs where they replace mappable resources are up to $15 to $80 per megawatt hours, but depending on the country, context, and technology. Sources such as wind and solar power under grid supply are that their actual capacity is discounted to account for disruptions. This is a factor of 0.43 for wind and 0.17 for solar photovoltaic, so the stated net capacity is the value used in the national reading. This has a significant impact on published load factors and capacities. It is clear that renewable energy sources have significant potential to meet basic electricity needs. However, once we solve the problem with their use, there is another challenge: to integrate them into the supply system where the greatest demand for sustainable and reliable supply. Obviously, the sun, wind, tides, and waves cannot be controlled to provide a direct or uninterruptible power supply to meet peak load power requirements when needed. So how can other manageable resources be managed to complement it? If there was a way to efficiently store large amounts of electricity from periodically variable renewable energy producers, such as solar and wind, the contribution of these technologies to meeting electricity demand would be much greater. The only renewable source with built-in storage and therefore delivered on demand is hydroelectricity from a dam. Storage can be increased by pumping water back when electricity costs are low, and such a dam system can be supplemented by pumping waterworks off the river. This requires a pair of small tanks in hilly terrain connected by pumps and turbine lines. Traditional peak load equipment can be used to some extent to provide charging capacity in systems that rely heavily on VRE sources such as wind and solar power. Nuclear energy is the only proven energy source to completely replace low-cost fossil fuels in rich countries. Although hydroelectric power plants can sometimes play this role, they are limited to countries with strong rivers, many of which already have dams. The main problem with solar and wind is that they are too unreliable and lack energy. Solar and wind power plants require between 400 and 750 times more space than nuclear and natural gas plants. With renewables on the horizon, it seems inevitable that over time Democrats will increasingly prioritize nuclear power over solar panels and wind turbines as the focus of their climate-saving plans. What are your thoughts on it? Let us know in the comments section. Also, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thanks for watching.